Well, Professor Sartorius, I'm wondering, how do you see the state of health in Western societies?
It depends on how you define health. If you define health as being the absence of disease, then the Western societies have made enormous progress because they have managed to remove some diseases, many diseases which were previously killing thousands and millions of people. But they are still faced with a variety of problems which are very serious. On one hand, there is the really enormous problem of non-communicable disease, which is growing for the simple reason that people are getting older, and because they are getting older, they are more likely to be at a high risk for cardiovascular illness, for diabetes, for cancer, and so forth. There are also conditions which are due to pollution, which I think are of great importance. Many of the pulmonary problems are related to living in towns and in places where the pollution is very high. We're still doing much better because the most polluted cities are not in Europe, but it is also in Europe that we get consequences of industrial and various other forms of pollution. There are also a variety of consequences of the lifestyle which has been adopted in European countries, with a mainly sedentary form of life where people not as a whole are not doing sufficient exercise. They don't think about their body sufficiently in a way, and very often therefore increase the risk for a variety of conditions.
Well, you just gave the perfect hint for me, not thinking about their body properly, because I'm dealing with executives in companies. And do you see a difference in their attitude towards health as compared to the general public?
Well, there has been a much more interest at mental health at the workplace. And I think it's been more concerned with the mental health than with other things, because the managers have gradually started to understand that the productivity depends on the mental health of their employees, and that they cannot expect that people will be producing very well if their mind is not in the right place. If people with whom they are working do not have a sense that they like what they're doing, and they stop being productive. They do their work all right, but it's very miserable.
Yeah, and they are getting to this state of being very unhappy about their work for a very long time, ending up burned out.
Many of the factors, there is undoubtedly the size of the unit which works together is of great importance. There is a sort of a limit to the number of people whom you can immediately, with whom you can have immediate contact. And that unit cannot be increased, unfortunately. That is how people are made. If you work with 4 to 6 people, maybe maximum 7 or 8, you have a kind of relationship with them, which is very different from a relationship with much larger groups. For larger groups, you also influence and are influenced by the larger group, but it's a different kind of relationship which you have with the larger group.
So if there is this big difference between how you interact with your next human being, especially in like a work environment, what needs to be done in companies to promote health of employees, to promote better work environments, happier employees?
Well, I think that managers should probably put it this way. Some people have grown up and are by their mental makeup extremely able to be friendly and be in leaders and do things and get their team full of energy and everything else. But others, God has not given them all of this, and but they need it just as much. And therefore, I think it is of great importance to think of teaching managers professional skills and leadership skills. Most of those skills can be easily learned, provided that you have taken the time to do it. There are numerous books, but books do not work because you cannot learn something that you didn't experience. You must learn what it means for somebody to be praised, because you will be praised yourself. And there's a variety of other skills which have to be learned by active participation in those. And this aspect is usually not existing. People who are very good at school, pass exams with excellence, have all sorts of diploma, recognition, who are inventive, are very often poor leaders because they have never learned it. They could learn it if somebody offered them the opportunity to do so. And that is a pity because their quality is outstanding, but their capacity to do things is diminished by not having the skills which they need.
So, how could they come by these skills?
Oh, they're
what would you recommend?
They're very easy to learn, provided that you're given a chance to learn them. For example, we have been doing for young doctors a series of courses in which we are, on one hand, we are trying to teach them simple things such as how to speak or how to listen. We have then done also other skills which are, I don't want to list them all of them. But
just a few for my readership. They'd love to know from you. What are the most important skills? What are the things that I should learn as an executive?
Number one skill probably is the skill of listening.
Number one?
Skill of listening.
Okay.
How to be able to listen to a person and to really give the person full attention while you are listening to him or her. And to be able to not only listen, but to also take in what the person has told you and then deal with this in a reasonable and sensible way. Very few people do not hear everything, because listening is not only by hearing words, it is also seeing the facial expression, the position of the body, the speed with which a person speaks, etc. You cannot do listening by reading what somebody wrote. There's other things which you can learn from reading, but for true listening, you have to have training in how to do it. Listening would be one skill that I would put very high. I would equally put a very high mark to speaking clearly, to speaking in a manner that people understand. That also requires both, on one hand, it requires modesty. It is not that you are so terribly clever that everybody will understand what you say. You learn how to find out what the people are who are around you and to make sure that you adjust the volume, the amount and the style of your information that you're giving to the group which is before you or with you.
So do you know of any leaders that are very good at that, that you post as a poster boy, poster girl, to show how to do it?
Most of them who are in a position for a longer time have it. It very often it depends on how much of these skills you have, how long you'll be in a position. Because sooner or later, if you don't have them, you lose your position. And it's different, of course, for people who are who are sitting up in a faraway office and give orders about things. They think that they do not need skills, but they need them as well. They also need to understand and to, as time goes by, to adjust themselves to people with whom they are working.
So do you see companies moving forward, educating their executives? Do you see a trend there? I
don't know enough about it. It may be that they do. I suspect that they are not foolish not to do it.
Definitely,
but I didn't participate. I've been doing some training myself for people in the diplomatic course, for staff of the international organizations. And I think people later told me that it was very useful at the entry in an international setting to get some briefing and some simple skills because it reduced their time of adjustment, etc. So that I know that in the international world, it is far too little skill training, communication training at present. One should give much more attention to it. But whether they do it in a company or not, I do not know.
Well, thank you very much. That sums it up very nicely.